Hello, my name is Shandiin Largo, and I will introduce myself in my native language. So, yat e Shandiin Largo Yinisha, Aron Anashaniki e Ashihinishlan, Kia Ani Bushishchin, Torichin Jishay Dot Sai Skinny Dashnella, a good ego dinastan Nishlan, Aro Tetat Hokole de Nasha. I'm a junior at Bowdoin College, and I'm the class of 2023. I started with looking into recent articles and about literature, Native American literature, and trying to find the most recent works that were published within the last year. And so that included looking into Indigenous artists who focused on identity within different avenues, like through gender and sexuality, and I also looked into social media accounts like Instagram, because there are budding Indigenous literature reviews and Indigenous literature lists from various sources. And so I went through different routes to find what I should be focusing on, and looking into what people will see as native led. I would say the process of looking into Native literature was really interesting because I didn't want to confine Indigenous literature to just identity, to just how we perceive our culture, our identities, especially in relation to Southern colonialism, or in terms of being in a very Eurocentric society. And so I kind of opened the doors to thinking about fiction and fantasy, and more than just identity, it was more about the content and the diversity of Indigenous literature, which is beyond the colonial view of their culture, of our culture, and of our identity, and of sacred traditional knowledge systems. It was more about how creativity, the Indigenous creativity, has led beyond those kind of confined spaces. And I think the thing that surprised me the most was how much Indigenous literature has grown since I was in high school, so about a couple of years ago. There's way more representation with two-spirit identity, which is the colonial concept of gender constructs before colonialism, which were not really as confined as they are now, in terms of a man and a woman. It was beyond that. And I think that's really valuable because it really highlights a way of thinking and a way of knowing that was never really represented before, but now is, I feel really having more representation. I would say I wanted to have a focus on the United States and Indigenous literature within the United States because it's what I know best. I mean, being Native American myself and being exposed to Indigenous literature within the United States for years now, it's what I know best, and it's what I can represent the best. So I wanted to represent the different periods of Native American literature, which basically started in the 1960s. And so I would say the first book that really caught my attention, or really was a catalyst for the growth of Native American literature and its visibility within American literature in general, I would say would be House Made of Dawn by Ansgar Mamade, because it was the first book to win a major award. And it highlighted different issues within Indigenous communities at the time. And I think that was just really valuable for just everything. It was a catalyst for Native American literature. And so I wanted to include that, but also contemporary artists, contemporary writers who have had a big voice and a big
Big impact?
Yeah, a big impact. And I would say they're less well known, but they're really influential. For example, They're There by Tommy Orange is one of the most well known today. And I would also say one that's caught my attention would be Billy Ray Belcourt. And I think his work is really great. And Joshua Whitehead. I think they're both great artists, or great writers. I would say my book display really focuses on I tried to focus on a lot of aspects of Indigenous literature. It's beyond the United States. It's more global. And I would say it's the voice of the people. It's not controlled by any other source. Whereas in the past, in academia, it's been controlled by anthropologists, and it's been seen through a very Eurocentric gaze. But with my collection, I tried to focus on strictly Indigenous authors who talk about their experiences and who showcase their creativity through fiction, through fantasy, through horror fiction, avenues like that. So I guess what I want to really highlight is how Indigenous people can thrive through literature and can showcase their own culture without much control of, by other people, and that we still exist today.